Hey, with you Evening Story Channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it.
It can't be, Maria thought to herself, looking at the tall gray-haired man who sat across from her and looked at her with pitying eyes, begging for her help. Here I never thought that the world was so small, and we would meet in such an unusual setting after so many years. She no longer looked at him like a rabbit at a boa constrictor. Maria had absolutely no feelings for him at all. Why should she be afraid? She is a respected specialist oncologist with a long work experience, having pulled out of that world not 1 dozen hopelessly ill people. But suddenly memories came over her, and as if her whole past life flashed before her eyes. Then, many years ago, it seemed to her that the world is arranged differently, and fate will definitely be favorable to her. But to get her way, Maria had to pass a long, thorny path of trials, on which she was waiting for one after another, and each of them left an indelible mark on her soul. Only years later, she was able to look at her life with completely different eyes and thank fate for all that it gave her. Where are you going to go to break it down? Every time Maria shared with her plans for the future. Who needs you there? A derelict country wench with no home and no money behind her. If every village girl would go to university, there would be no one left in our region, and not only in our region. You're funny. You haven't even graduated high school yet. You're already making plans. Who's gonna take care of your brothers and sisters? You'll leave it all on my shoulders. You're shameless. I thought I was giving birth to an assistant. It turns out that I brought up a real egoist, for whom family is an empty sound, and relatives and close people mean nothing. Wendy was very dissatisfied with her daughter, and the older Maria became, the more claims she had to listen to from her mother, who barely made ends meet alone, raising 5 children. From morning till night, Wendy disappeared to the local store, where she worked without a day off in order to at least feed her family. There was no other work in the small village, and the woman had to make do with little. Maria was the only one of the family who went to school several dozen kilometers away. The rest of the children were either too young or voluntarily refused to get an education, so as not to bother with the daily long-distance trips. Mom children are obliged to get a secondary education. Maria was indignant when she learned that brother Nick and sister Vanessa were not going to school. What are they going to do when they grow up? Go out and stay in this hole forever. You don't scold our hole, do you? Mother answered. You don't like such a motive. Nobody keeps you here. As soon as you get your diploma, go to your capital or wherever you are. Don't touch my children. People used to live in villages. It was good. Agriculture was prosperous. We always had a roof over our heads. What we gathered with our own hands we put on the table. Everyone was happy, not like now. But when was that? Grandma remembered when she was a girl. Unlike her mother and other members of her family, Maria never understood how one could be happy in poverty, when even for an extra loaf of bread, one had to scrape every penny out of the paycheck. It was all wild to her. But Wendy used to live like that, so she supported the growing up Iblers in every possible way. And on Maria at every opportunity, all the obligations. Not letting her daughter, not quietly studying, not preparing for exams. If you think that I will give you at least money for a ticket, then do not deceive, the woman said. You will not get a penny from me. I'm not working here for you to travel around the capitals. When you earn your own money, then you can go to Seattle to enroll in an institute. I don't even dream about it. There was nowhere to work in the settlement in desperation. Maria, on the eve of graduation, got a job on a farm, which was located right next to the school. Can you tell me if I can sleep here? The girl asked the owner. Why don't you have a place to stay? He was surprised. If there is no place at all, you can move in with me. I have a house nearby. Husband and such a beautiful folding girl will always find something to do. Maria immediately understood what he was implying and didn't ask any more questions. Luckily for her, the owner's wife came to the farm every day, a full-fledged authoritative aunt with an angry face who chased not only the employees and livestock, but also her own husband. He feared her like fire. That's why as soon as he smelled his wife coming, he immediately forgot about his nasty, greasy things. And standing at attention, he did everything the woman in authority told him to do. Maria found a way to spend the night at the farm, She worked late, and when everyone left, she'd set up in the hayloft behind the barn. As the girl got up, neither the owner nor his wife had time to notice that Maria did not come to work every morning and did not leave the farm late at night. The girl remained unnoticed in this way until her very last day of work, right up to her graduation from high school. 2 days a week she worked on the farm, 2 days she studied. Thanks to this, she managed to save up the right amount of money, and immediately after graduation, Maria started for Seattle. It would have been better to give all her earnings to help her family. Wendy was indignant, watching her daughters packing. Vanessa should buy at least one new pair of shoes, but the girl is practically barefoot. Vang has grown out of everything. How long have I been in the neighborhood? Hardly anyone here has kids. What of the old stuff could you change? I stopped. You have no shame, no conscience. Your Seattle is taxing you. Where do you go when you're broke? Back to your family. Who else wants you? When she left, Maria said she'd never go back to her hometown. No matter how hard it was, and no matter what happened, this road is closed for her forever. The last years of the girl's life was not as hard as before, when Wendy still lived with her husband, Alex, now and then put to the bottle, and from time to time her mother kept him company. Sometimes Maria had to walk around the settlement in a long-sleeved sweater, even in summer, to hide the bruises. From time to time, she asked herself why she did it. After all, everyone hears everything and knows everything, but for some reason she still felt ashamed. She blamed herself for letting her father get away with it. With a man finally sick of scandals with his wife and always running around the house as something demanding children, he found nothing better than to move into the house to his mother, who all his life blamed the troubles of his son's wife and took him with open arms. But even after that, Maria's life did not seem sweet. With every day, the mother became only more aggressive and took out all her anger on the children. Maria, as the eldest daughter, she never loved, believing that it was her willful and proud fool to blame for the fact that the relationship in the family did not work out. Normal daughters, when mothers grow up, help around the house and the household, I read Wendy. It's not like you're a chicken with no hands. You don't even peel potatoes for yourself. You don't help with the dishes. You have to beg, as if you don't live in a house but in a stable. After arriving in the capital, Maria immediately rented a small room. She could not believe that she had finally escaped from that long-lasting hell in which she had been forced to exist only because she was unlucky enough to be born into such a family. The very next day after moving in, Maria applied to several medical schools at once. She had always dreamed of becoming a doctor, and until that moment, she had never been so close to realizing the main goal in her life. But instead of the expected joy of enrollment, the girl was disappointed. When Maria did not see her name in the list, she burst into tears of frustration. Cheerful young people were passing by, and she stood in the middle of the walls of the cherished institute and could not hold back her tears. Maria also did not have enough points to pass on the budget to other institutes. Coming to her senses, the girl realized with horror that savings are running out, and she has nowhere to go back to. "I'm on the ad," she said, entering the restaurant, which she found on the internet. Coming out of the institute, the girl lost her tears and remembered that she had given herself a promise not to return to her past life under any circumstances, and no matter what happened, to go to the end. She began to look for vacancies, and having found several decent institutions close to the institute, decided not to call and immediately come for an interview. "What at?" lazily asked the administrator, who with all of his appearance demonstrated Maria that she is nobody and her name is nothing. That's why the girl replied, came up to the very face of the young man. Smartphone, which she bought on occasion at the local flea market in her native village a few years ago. Putting aside the money that the mother with a creaking heart gave her daughter for school lunches. "So you should have said you wanted to get a job as a waitress. This isn't your village, dearie. You know how many jobs are posted every day? You can't count them." After these words, Maria realized that she was talking too simple and provincial, since even the restaurant manager immediately realized that she was not from here. Quickly explained the working conditions. The young man gave the girl a business card with 2 phone numbers, 1 city and 1 cell phone. "Call, take the tests, and as soon as the book is ready, you can go to work right away," he said. And without even saying goodbye, he left for the back room. After 2 months of work, Maria seemed to be settling in quite well. Her salary was paid on time, Tips were generous. She had enough money not only to ensure her own prosperous life in the capital, but also to help her brothers and sisters, to whom she sent remittances out of pity. Well, at least something, as they say, from a lousy sheep, at least a piece of wool, said Wendy. Every time Maria called her to tell her that she had sent another transfer to the card and to find out whether the money had arrived, the girl tried not to pay attention to her mother's statements and not to take them to heart. Maria was convinced that she should be at least some support for her brothers and sisters, who were not guilty of anything. Spelled out all the expenses. Maria started to save money for her college application, in case she still could not pass on the budget. She didn't plan to give up her dream and could easily realize it even in a year. She didn't have to spend that money on 2 months of rent and look for a new job after she was unfairly fired. That day started as usual. It could have ended like other days if he hadn't shown up. The arrogant, haughty man was clearly not in the mood, and Maria tried to do her best to please him without provoking his rage in any way. The coffee wasn't cold. She justified herself with tears in her eyes, but it was as if the administrator did not hear her arguments. "It's not that it was cold or hot," replied the young man, "but that you spilled it on his pants. But how can you be so careless? It's not your first day on the job. I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. This Anthony is a very respected and well-known man in town. He's a valued guest in our restaurant. I'm not only going to fire you, I'm going to fine you. So again, I'm sorry. You don't have to come back to work. And as you understand, there will be no pay because we still have to work off his pants, which cost as much as 40 dinners in our restaurant." When Maria got home, she burst into tears at the injustice. The next day she planned, as she usually did every week, to wire her mother money. And when Wendy did not receive the transfer, she immediately called her daughter and made a scandal. That's it. I take it that the subsidies of the successful sister in respect of the destitute and destitute siblings ended. Angrily asked her, "Why is that so?" "Mom, I have unforeseen circumstances," Maria replied, barely holding back her tears. She did not want to share with her mother what had happened, because she knew that instead of support, she would hear only reproaches. "I quit my job. Now I'm looking for a new one, as soon as I find one and get the first money. I'll wire it to you right away." "So you got kicked out," Wendy exclaimed wryly. "What else could I expect from you?" "Okay, call me. I won't disappear." The woman hung up, and Maria cried even harder with despair. She hadn't been surprised for a long time that her mother wasn't even interested in how she was doing. Wendy was indifferent to absolutely everything except money. But deep down, the girl was still very hurt. She could not help but worry about the indifference and cynicism of her mother, from whom she would have liked to receive at least a little supportive love. When Maria went to several restaurants and was refused in all of them, she realized that she was not just fired. She had been put out on the street with a wolf ticket, and now working in the restaurant industry was closed to her forever. There wasn't much money set aside, and Maria realized that it would barely be enough for 2 months, and that was if she cut back on all her groceries and cosmetics. In desperation, she took the first job she could find that promised her at least a reasonable wage. "Where do you go at night now?" With suspicion. "Asked my roommate in the warehouse. I'd work in the storeroom. Night shifts," answered Maria, who sincerely did not understand such a strong interest in her life on the part of a complete stranger. "Officially registered." Continued interrogation. "Neighbor. Formalize what?" "Show me a labor card or a contract, because we know you night butterflies. How will they move to the capital for a couple or 3 months? They'll have a good life, and then you'll get them out of the brothels with nothing but trouble." Realizing that if she doesn't show, the arrangement could lose her room, Maria took the papers out of her bag and shoved them in her neighbor's face. "Here you go," she said, "and don't lump all people into the same category. If you have, as you put it, everyone in the capital is like that, then I am not like that, and I don't intend to listen to your accusations. They are deeply unpleasant to me." In response, the neighbor's face creased, and Maria went to her room and closed the door behind the slit. From the very first working day at the new place, she began to save every penny in order to save up the necessary amount to enter the institute. At that moment, the girl finally realized that she had no other choice but to enter the budget and during her studies to live on savings until there is an opportunity to get a job, to work in the specialty. For 3 whole years, she went to this goal. And when she finally saw her name in the list of enrolled, her joy was not limited. In the corridor, she heard the conversation of non-resident students about the dormitory and decided that the saved money would not be superfluous during all these years. She had never sent her family a single remittance because she realized that she needed to get on her own feet first and then help others. But knowing how Maria's siblings lived, she had absolutely no desire to sponsor them. Maria's mom is actually dead. Vanessa said when she called her sister to ask for money for the memorial once again. Maria knew that's not why her sister needed the money. By then, Vanessa was already a young mother herself. Who exactly is the father of the child? She never said because she had no idea. Since she was a teenager, Vanessa had not been too choosy about relationships. And Wendy, who, a year after Maria moved in, began to drink more and more often, had no time for parenting. Vanessa, I don't have any money myself right now, Maria answered every time her sister called and asked her to help. The girl knew not only about Vanessa's lifestyle, but also that her brothers Jack and Nick also regularly abused alcohol, did not study or work. You become a bitch. Vanessa was offended. My daughter has nothing to eat. My brother's sons are hungry too. And you're stuck in your life in the capital and don't give a damn about your family. You could have taken pity on a baby. Maria was shocked when she found out that her brothers also had children and in the house, where it was already impossible to pass. 2 more girls with their babies moved in. You still have milk on your lips. Maria read it when Vanessa was complaining about her life. But what were you thinking? Out of pity for the children, she still sent some money to Vela from time to time. Maria realized that her sister spent it not so much on the children as on alcohol and entertainment. But Maria had neither the opportunity nor the desire to go and control the expenses. After their father passed away, neither Vanessa, Jack, nor Nick had ever been in close contact with him. The lifestyle of the siblings only made it worse. Val, are you even watching The Youngest? Maria asked pitifully, hoping that at least Molly wouldn't follow in her family's footsteps. She's only 14 years old. She could still have a future. We'd better keep an eye on our own children. Vanessa waved it off. Molly was an adult. She figured it out on her own. Maria guessed that she was a minor too. Molly was already on a crooked path, but Maria didn't have time to pull her, as well as the rest of her family, out of the swamp. And even before she got her diploma, she got a job at a hospital, and with each passing year only improved her skills. 10 years after graduation, she was able to become one of Seattle's top oncologists. Patients respected Maria and came to her with the hope of actually getting well or saving a family member. He was also the man who at one time had almost put an end to Maria's life in Seattle, putting the poor girl on the brink of survival. Now sat before her and begged her to save his wife. She recognized him immediately, and even after all these years, he wouldn't have mistaken her for anyone else. "Didn't expect to see you here?" Anthony said quietly, looking into Maria's eyes. And after these words, there was a silence between them, which was interrupted a few minutes later by the woman herself. "If you mean the past," she replied, "I hold no grudges against you, and I'm certainly not going to settle personal scores with you. For that you can rest assured. As for your wife, a successful operation does not mean an equally successful recovery, and everything depends not only on me and my professionalism, but also on your wife's organism, on her state of health, on her readiness to fight for her life. Like other patients, I can't promise you anything, but I promise that I will do everything in my power. Forgive me if you can." Never before in his life had he been so desperate, as then, for the first time in his life, he realized that he could only hope for a miracle. His beloved wife was dying. She was getting worse day by day, and he no longer believed that after all the surgeries he had undergone, another intervention would bring any positive results. But he was wrong, and a week later, he was sitting in the same office with an important document in his hands and thanked Maria for saving his wife. "Take your time," she said. "Your wife still has a long road of rehabilitation and recovery ahead of her, but you have a very resilient wife. I am more than sure that everything will be fine. Hang in there." "It was to you," he replied, holding out a document to her. "What is it?" Maria asked in surprise. "It's a gift deed. I want to give you the apartment. It's for saving my wife and as compensation for the past. You were fired from a well-paid restaurant, weren't you? You're all alone in a strange city. I'm guessing you had a hard road to travel before you got everything you dreamed of and deserved. Yes, you are right, answered Maria, who was embarrassed, ready to refuse such an expensive gift. But Anthony, as if reading her thoughts, added, just don't refuse. Don't offend me. Let me do something good for you. 3 months later, after all the paperwork had been completed, Maria moved into a new apartment. Anthony's wife was discharged from the hospital, and he once again came by to thank Maria for her help. She replied that it was not worth it to help people. It is my duty and my vocation.